From Church Militant Studios, this is the Church Militant Evening News.
Hello, and thank you for joining us this Thursday, March 23rd. I'm Kim Tizer, along with the one and only Hunter Bradford, here with Catholic News and Context. Tonight, faithful Catholics take a stand against a prominent Catholic institution. This archbishop comes in defense of the sacred seal of confession, and another prelate calls out Germany's synodal way for deviating from God's truth.
Leading us off tonight, roughly a year after he led the consecration of Russia and Ukraine to Mary, Pope Francis is urging faithful to keep up the prayers. At his general audience in St. Peter's Square on Wednesday, the Holy Father asked people to renew their consecration of humanity to Mary, but especially Russia and Ukraine. On March 25th last year, the Feast of the Annunciation, Pope Francis consecrated the world, including Russia and Ukraine, to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Church Militant covered the historic moment with Michael Voris, Dr. William Mahoney, and Brad Eli.
And the second question, why use Francis? Why not use a Holy Ghost like John Paul II? But really shows the power of the Patrine office. This is his Humanae Vitae moment. This is like Paul VI drafting Humanae Vitae. And, there's a lot of pushback with Humanae Vitae. There'll probably be a lot of pushback with this, too.
Months ago, sources from Rome indicated German Bishop Heiner Wilmer would be the next head of the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith. Weeks ago, the 61-year-old head of the Diocese of Hildesheim sent a letter to his diocese that's troubling to faithful Catholics. For example, he explicitly advocates for, quote, significant changes in sexual morality in the Catholic Church. Wilmer also praises his diocese, saying, we have begun to fill pastoral positions with people who have not studied theology or religious education, but instead have matriculated in cultural studies, social pedagogy, or architecture.
Bishop Donald Hine of Madison, Wisconsin, is calling out errant bishops overseas. On Tuesday, he wrote a letter in the diocesan newspaper regarding the dissident German synodal way. The 59-year-old prelate hits the nail on the head, saying no one has the authority to change church teaching, as if the truth given is malleable and adaptive to changing cultural norms. Such a path would lead to both error and irrelevance.
Last night, we premiered Spotlight, Did Mccarrick Make a Murderer? On disturbing ties between defrocked Cardinal Theodore Mccarrick and Robert Chambers, also known as the Preppy Killer, convicted in 1988 for killing Jennifer Levin. Here's an excerpt.
Nothing I can do or say will ever bring her back, but I am sorry.
On March 25th, 1988, Robert Emmett Chambers, Catholic, pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter in the death of Jennifer Levin.
While a tearful and distraught Mrs. Chambers sought the comfort of friends, her husband, Robert Sr., maintained a silent calm. Just moments before, inside the courtroom, the Chambers had heard the sentencing of their son for first-degree manslaughter.
He was sentenced to 5 to 15 years. 2 years before, in the early morning hours of August 26, 1986, the body of 18-year-old Jennifer Levin was spotted beneath a tree in Central Park, just across from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. She was strangled and half naked. When police arrived at the scene, they didn't know her killer was still there, only yards away, observing.
Joining us now is senior producer and investigative reporter Christine Niles, who produced the Spotlight. Hello and welcome, Christine.
Hey, Kim, great to be here.
So this is fascinating, like they all are. What first prompted you to start looking into connections between Mccarrick and Robert Chambers?
Right, so I kind of remember this story. I was a kid back in 1986, but I just remember it made national headlines. I remember hearing snatches of it here and there and never really thought much about it until 2018, the summer of shame, when all the news broke about Mccarrick, being suspended for sexually abusing an altar boy, a 16-year-old altar boy, decades ago. And I remember reading about how Mccarrick had intervened in the Robert Chambers trial, writing a letter to the judge, asking the judge to let him out on bail. And that was my first, that piqued my interest. And I thought, why would, at the time, a bishop, why would he intervene in such a high-profile case for this 19-year-old guy arrested, for killing somebody. Why would he do that? And I just started thinking, I've got to look into this. And I was busy with lots of other investigations, so I didn't have time. But it was always in the back of my mind, like, I need to look into this relationship, because you don't just do that as a bishop. Right. There must be some backstory here. And so I started investigating. I started reading old news clippings, watching old media reports, trying to get in touch with the people who knew Robert Chambers at the time, and talking to victims too of Mccarrick. And it was extremely eye-opening what I found out. This is the first ever in-depth look at the ties between Mccarrick and Chambers. And I don't want to give everything away. I encourage people to go watch it, because it was very eye-opening what I found out. There were far more connections than people even know.
Well, I'm sure what people are wondering, the $64 million question, is, did Mccarrick sexually abuse Chambers? And did that play a part in turning him into a killer?
Well, I am going to let the viewer draw their own connections and connect the dots themselves. I will simply say, and this is my personal opinion, I believe the answer is yes. I know that Robert Chambers and his ex-girlfriend at the time believes it. Definitely, she contacted us. Or we contacted her, and she told us that. I spoke to the prosecutor. She believes it's a possibility, the lead detective. I just think it's very compelling evidence. I just encourage the viewer to watch themselves and draw their own conclusions.
Well, thank you for this excellent investigation once again, Christine. And of course, you can watch Spotlight, Did Mccarrick Make a Murder? Now on our website, churchmilitant.com. Please go watch it. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim and Christine. A group of faithful Catholics is speaking out against the University of Notre Dame for allowing trans and abortion activists an unrestricted platform. Wednesday, the Sycamore Trust, headed by a board of Notre Dame alumni, released an open letter to the school administration calling for action against the scandalous Reproductive Justice series.
The panelists have been unremittingly hostile to the Catholic Church's position on abortion. All of these organizations, units of the University of Notre Dame, in effect telling the students who are charged, or the university is charged with their moral formation by their parents. We have these units telling the students that abortion is perfectly all right.
And the local bishop is also rebuking Notre Dame for hosting the pro-trans and pro-abortion event. On Tuesday, Bishop Kevin Rhodes of Fort Wayne and South Bend published a statement calling the decision to have the event, quote, intellectually unserious and unworthy of a great Catholic research university. He went on to proclaim the Gender Studies program and the Riley Center's decision to invite an abortion doula to provide an unanswered activist case that abortion is a tool of justice for the marginalized is a grave mistake in judgment that creates scandal.
And joining us now to give more details on the Notre Dame scandal is our reporter and producer, Nicholas Wiley. Nick, good to see you.
Thanks, Hunter. What this all comes down to is Notre Dame's policy of so-called academic freedom. Under that policy, the university is allowed to engage with anti-Catholic thought, but Mr. Dempsey told me they're only allowed to do this with this stipulation.
The position of the Catholic Church and the reasons for their positions are at the same time advanced, so that it's not by any means, it's a balanced discussion and not a one-sided trashing of church of church teachings.
Mr. Dempsey, a Notre Dame alum who loves the university and thinks it still has some great pro-life organizations on campus, called this just a great scandal. Like we reported, the Sycamore Trust, which he heads, wrote an open letter to the administration, and Mr. Dempsey urges everyone to read it and sign it. But Bishop Kevin Rhodes also commented on the so-called academic freedom afforded Notre Dame, writing, academic freedom is meant to create the space for free inquiry and intellectual exchange in service of pursuing and sharing the truth in charity, but this lecture is simply a conduit for activist propaganda that is not merely wrong, but squarely contrary to principles of basic human equality, justice, dignity, and nonviolence that the Catholic Church, Notre Dame, and many others, including non-Catholics, have affirmed for millennia.
Interesting. Nick, last night we aired Christine Now's Spotlight on Theodore Mccarrick, and now that we're talking about this and having to do with Notre Dame, I'm reminded of the Land O'Lakes statement in 1967, which Theodore Mccarrick played a big part in orchestrating. Does that 1967 statement have anything to do with this Notre Dame scandal?
Yeah, Hunter, I would say it definitely does. Mccarrick was instrumental in that document, which called for Catholic universities to have autonomy, quote, in the face of authority of whatever kind. So basically, the major Catholic universities told the church, you can't control us because the only way we can survive is if we are free to talk about all topics, which basically means you have to give us a platform to call into question any church teaching that we want.
And I have the document with me. I'm looking at the bottom. The people who signed it, they're so-called seminar participants. Of course, like I said, Mccarrick there, but heads of Georgetown University, Fordham, Boston College, St. Louis, all of the seemingly well-known Catholic universities, they have a hand in this seemingly heretical, off-base statement. But Nick, thank you for reporting on what's going on at Notre Dame, and thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Hunter. God bless.
God bless.
Thank you both, gentlemen. Well, following up on a story we covered yesterday, a bishop is coming out strong against a retired priest for writing publicly against the seal of confession. Archbishop Jerome Listecki of Milwaukee issued a statement yesterday rebuking scandalous assertions by Father James Connell. Connell argued in an opinion piece, priests should violate the seal of confession, an excommunicable offense, in the name of exposing sex abuse. Michael Hitchborn of Catholic watchdog group the Lepanto Institute has been on top of this story, and his reporting might have played a role in the Archbishop's decision to speak out.
Thanks be to God for Archbishop Listecki's bold and swift action on this very serious matter. Unfortunately, it's really rare for a bishop today to make such a strong stand against an errant priest, and that's why the Lepanto Institute is calling on Catholics everywhere to pray a rosary for Archbishop Listecki in thanksgiving for his strong defense of the sacrament of confession.
Well said. Michael Hitchborn, of course, a friend of church militants. We appreciate his work. Well, when we come back, a woke theme park in Florida promotes sexual deviancy. And what are Catholics to make of Florida's governor? We'll let you decide. Stay tuned. All that and more up next.
Thank you for watching the first half of Church Militant Evening News.
If you would like to watch the rest of today's episode, please click the link in the description, and we'll see you at churchmilitant.com. God love you.